get, and I know it's way more than you thought you'd get. I said, what do you got to lose? I said, what do you think we'd get for this thing? He said, I don't know, between 15 and 2. I said, well, then you're ahead from the almost right now, because you got the whole 15. Because there's just something about this guy. You know, he said he'd do it, and I believed him. I believe it was about 26 days later, Larry called me up, and he said, you ain't going to believe what happened. And I said, what happened? He said, Beetle called me today and told me to go down to Western Union. He went down there, and there was a money order for $1,600 for him. Guy paid him $100 interest.
Good. That's a happy ending.
It was a real happy ending. That's the day I became friends with Raymond Beetle, and it still stands. I saw him at Indy this year. I hear all these bad things about Beetle, but I don't know anybody he's ever done anything to. I mean, the guy, I'm pretty big on this, you give your word. I guess I was taught that way, I don't know, but he pretty class act as far as I'm concerned.
So, after you sold this car, then where you went? Where did you go?
Went in with a guy named Andy Clary. He had a funny car. And as a matter of fact, I don't know if you remember the Savage clutches.
It sounds familiar.
In the early 70s, they were a big deal. It's about the time Hayes sold out to WR or to Mr. Gasket Company, mm-hmm. and the guy named Red, they called him the Savage. He worked for Hayes, and Frank Carsten worked for Hayes. And well, Hayes went, Carsten, who is with AFT now, Bob Brooks, went back to Cleveland with Mr. Gasket, and Red didn't have nothing to do. And there's this guy named John Waddell, lived over in Orange or somewhere, had more money than he had good sense, I can guarantee you that. They decided to start a clutch company, and he proceeded to spend about $2 million of his money on that deal. But him and Andy Clary had a funny car. He paid all the bills, and Andy drove the car and maintained it. One day he told Andy, he said, I've got this new clutch company going, I don't have time to fool with it, I'm just going to give you all this. So he gave him a brand new Bolus trailer, a Dodge pickup, a funny car, and all the parts. Well, they were 392 parts. And there's something about them funny cars we found out later, because I had, as a matter of fact, I believe it was 4 complete motors. I had spent the whole winter putting all my stuff together and getting new stuff, and because I was going to find somebody to go race with. I had 4 complete motors. Had them sitting in my garage in little carts I built for them, you know, and I'd just go out there and look at them. Figured I couldn't tear them up looking at them, you know. Mm-hmm. So I went in with Andy, and we ran the car, and what we found out was those 392s didn't react to transmissions. You know, we used torque flights back then.
What do you mean they didn't react to them?
Well, we'd blow 2 up a week. You know, finally we didn't have nothing. We started with about 7 or 8 motors and didn't have nothing after a couple of months, because we couldn't figure out why. First of all, it'd spit a transmission out every run. We had to put a transmission in every run, but a lot of people did that. Everybody ran them torque flights. The Chi-Town Hustler, the Hawaiian, all of them did. So that's what we did, you know. Mm-hmm. There were no 2-speeds. Lenco hadn't come on the scene yet.
Right.
And Andy had a brother who was a big roofing contractor in Buena Park, Clary Brothers Roofing. And he'd go to the races with us. He'd just shake his head. You know, we worked so hard and never could do nothing, you know. And he said, one night we stopped at Love's Barbecue there beside the freeway on right outside of, I guess it's in Tustin. Mm-hmm. And we were talking in there, and his brother said, Gene, what do you think the problem is? He said, are you guys doing something wrong? I said, no, I know what the problem is. We don't have a 426. That's what it takes. These 392s ain't never going to do it, and I'm ready to quit. And what does one of them cost? And I said, God, I don't know. Thousands. As it turned out, they were, I believe one was a complete 426, and we had 8 spare pistons and 8 spare rods and 4 T-shirts. Black even charged us for the T-shirts.
Nice.
But he went down there. On Monday night, he came over to the shop and he said, you guys both go down to Keith Black's in the morning and take everything you own. I said, what for? He said, I bought you a motor. And Andy said, what do you mean you bought us a motor? He said, I bought you a motor. He said, my God, how much was it? He said, $7,100. He said, you're going to get a spare set of pistons, a spare set of rods. And anyway, I remember Black saying, well, we went down there. We took all our stuff down there. And he came out, and it was the back of my pickup, and he said, ain't nothing here I can use. And I expect Black just did a good sales job on us there, because I know we had something that had to be, you know, the magneto or something,
Sure.
you know. And because you could change the shaft in it to fit the 426.
Sure.
We had some good Cirillo magnetos, and about 3 of them, I think. And anyway, he didn't want nothing. He wanted to use all new stuff. So I'd go down there every day. That's what Andy's brother wanted us to do, was go down there every day and learn what we could. And John Cranenberg, who used to work for the Greek, he was working for Keith Black, and he built our motor and spent a lot of time telling me about it. And Rowan had just had a fire in the Hawaii and burn it plumb up. And he was there getting him a new car built. And he asked me, he says, how far do you guys ever go to race? I said, well, I don't know. We go to Orange County and Long Beach and Irwindale. We have been up to Sacramento. Well, he said, would you go to Salt Lake City? I said, how far is it? He said, 500 miles. Or 600 or whatever it was. And I said, I don't know. I said, I've talked to Andy. So he said, well, I've got a race up there. I can put you in. And you get paid $750 for 2 rounds. If you go more than, you know, if you make 1 qualifying run, everybody will qualify. It's a bought-in show. And get beat the first round, you get $750. And if you go further, you get more. So we went up. I talked to Andy about it, and he said, yeah, let's go. So we go up there, and we went to the finals. We got beat. Perdome beat us. And we got $1,275. And God, we had never got any money before. We didn't know what. Couldn't believe we'd got paid. And the guy paid for our motel also. He paid all that.
So good. Big time.
And while we were checking the car out, and for the first time we were able to get 2 runs on a transmission. And we figured it was because the motor would stay up high enough when it shifted. Like, we didn't have a tachometer on the thing, but we thought those 392s, we were losing a lot of RPM when it shifted. That's what was tearing them up. And I'm reasonably certain that's what it was. But we were getting it all ready, fixing to head home. And this guy come up and he said, I own Continental Divide Raceway in Denver, Colorado. And he said, you boys care about coming over and running on Sunday? And this was Friday night. He says, I'll pay you the same as here. And I said, well, the only problem is, what happens if we get beat first round over there? I said, we can't race. We couldn't come over there for no $750. He said, well, he told me he paid you $1,275. I said, oh. And I said, I see. And he said, if you go to the second round, he said, I'll give you 200 more. If you go to he said, it's an 8-car show. If you go to the final, he said, I'll give you $1,650 to runner up, and I'll give you $2,000 if you win it. And I said, who's going to be there? And he started calling off a name. And I said, well, there ain't no danger of us winning this one. I can tell you that for sure. I was scared going in, but the guy's going to pay us $1,275. So I said, what do you think? He said, let's go. So we take off, me and Andy and his 2 boys. And we go over there, and unloaded the car, and I talked to some guys there about the track, and they told me it's a good track. And so we ran down through there, and I think we ran a, I don't know, 780 or something, which in those days up high was really good. 780 or 790. And Snake come out there and ran a 770, which naturally he was head and shoulders above the rest of us. You know, I just figured it was his race, and that was the end of that. And next thing you know, I found out we were in the final, and we whipped him. We won the whole deal. So we had $3,275 for a weekend of racing, and we ain't hurt nothing. Because Roland told me, he said, up there, he said, up there in that altitude, you can't burn this thing up. Don't even worry about it. He said, put the can in it, don't mess with it. Well, we put 80% in it the first run we made, and it barely got down the track. And the spark plugs, I had to, well, in those days you didn't throw them away every run, but I threw these away. They were black and wet, and because it was so fat, you know. And so then we put the can in it, like Roland said, and Andy said, well, I guess if we're going to blow it up, we might as well do it and get it over with so we can quit. But we had $3,275. We'd stand, and the guy paid our motel too, same deal. So Sunday night we were sitting in a room, and he said, he said, Gene, you know that cousin of yours you was telling me about that Jesse knows? And Jess Tyree's Andy's brother-in-law. And I said, Bob Doss? He said, what does he do? And I said, well, he runs that gold agency for Ben Crist, and they run US 30 drag strip in Alton and Oswego, and then they got a couple over in Indiana and one up in Michigan. And he said, wonder if he'd get us any races. I said, you mean go back there and race them people? Because that's where the bad funny cars hung out, was back in Chicago. And I said, well, I don't know. He said, well, do you got his phone number? I said, sure. So I called Bob up, and I told him who it was, and I told him what we had. I said, this ain't no Mickey Mouse operation. And I told him what we had done that weekend, you know, and he said, tell you what. He said, Goski just had appendicitis, and he's not going to be around for a while. He said, you show up Wednesday night at US 30, go in there and see our Litchie. You won't have no trouble recognizing him. He weighs about 600 pounds. And he'll be screaming at somebody. I said, why? And he said, because that's the only way he talks to people, scream at them. I said, now wait a minute. He said, he's all right, don't worry about it. I'll tell him you're coming. And he said, I'll give you $800 for 2 runs. And I said, what if we win? He said, well, you won't win. Because he said, I got Roland there, and I got the Chi-Town Hustler there, and I got, he called them off, you know. And he said, but he said, if you go, he said, first of all, he said, it's not, I said, well, what if we go to the second round? He said, well, the second round's the final. He said, the way we do it here, everybody goes out and makes one run, the 2 fast cars come back and run each other. They call that Chicago style match race. So we went back there and we met and he told us, he said, I don't put up with nobody coming here thinking they can stroke it. I want everybody to run hard. He said, no, all these guys know me, and the smartest thing you could do is go out and talk to them and find out what kind of person I am, and they'll tell you I'm crazy. But I know what's going on, so don't go out there and try to stroke it. So we went out there and ran the thing as hard as we could and run up, I don't know, 790 or something like that. He comes walking by, he said, you boys did real good. Now, we wasn't the 2 low. As a matter of fact, Roland and the Chi-Town Hustler were the 2 lows. And I questioned some of the times. They said we ran 229 miles an hour, and we hadn't run over 200 but about 3 times. But then I found out that their clocks were a little bit happy there at US 30.